backseat of a Humvee. My heart's racing, my mind's racing, and my gunner's crouching down into the vehicle, down out of his turret, to avoid the rounds that are ricocheting around him. Where's the enemy? Where are they out? We can't see. We've got to move this vehicle so we can see. The vehicle commander calls up the contact to higher headquarters. I've got to see. Don't move the vehicle. I tell my driver. Because Chris is standing right outside my window, using the vehicle for protection from where the enemy fire is coming from. If we move, he's hit. How is he not hit already? How is he not hit already? The air is full of bullets. He's jacked up. My men are diving for cover outside the vehicle, and I'm sitting here safe. Or maybe I should get out. Where's he coming from? Useless question. My gunner sticks his head up, he'll lose it. At least EOD is safe. Inside the vehicle. 3 seconds. If the enemy had ambushed us 3 seconds earlier, our EOD team lead would be lying beside his vehicle dead. The bullets had impacted his door as he shut it. At least they're safe, and we've got to get them back to base. They're that important. We've got to fight the enemy, but it's more important to get EOD back safely. I've got this vehicle. I've got the men from the foot patrol I was just on. I've got another vehicle, and EOD has their vehicle. I've got to get them back. The firing stops. How is no one hit? No time for surviving euphoria. We've got to move. We've got to move, get eyes on the enemy. Okay, so basic protocol says we've got to have 2 vehicles for just basic survivability, but screw protocol today. Sending 1 vehicle back with EOD. We're going to move this vehicle. We're going to regain contact with the enemy towards that open field. We're going to find him. We're going to finish him. Chris, bring your foot patrol. Follow us. We start moving towards that field. My gunner's up now. He's looking. He can't see the enemy. I need eyes on. I've got to see. This house will do. We move towards the rooftop. The all-familiar rooftop that has become famous in movies and in real life. Now we can scan the sector. We've got to find him. This is our moment. This enemy has peppered us with roadside bombs, with mortar rounds, firing and then fading away into the population, and then murdering and intimidating that same population. And now we're face to face with them. We know how this ends. We win. We've got to see them. I've got somebody across the field in the courtyard with an AK-47. I've got eyes on. Good. My fire support officer calls up the fire mission. We can drop a precision artillery round right onto that house and into that courtyard and end this right now. We feel good. Fire mission's ready. Okay, so criteria for dropping an artillery round. Currently in contact with the enemy. Positively identify the enemy as such. Where's he at? I think he's in the house. He was just in the courtyard. He's got to be in the house. Civilian casualties and collateral damage minimized or justified. Yeah, he's got to be in that house. He's got to be in the house alongside whoever was just hanging that laundry out to dry. What do? This is our moment. I wouldn't have used these words at the time, but we were coming out of an organizational identity crisis. My name is Jamie Goudori. I'm a follower of Jesus, a father, a husband, I'm a son, and a brother. I'm a citizen of the United States of America. I'm a veteran. Today we're going to talk for just a few minutes about this topic of identity. Merriam-Webster Online has several definitions. One of those is this: sameness of essential character in different instances. Think about that for a minute. Sameness of essential character in different instances. What about you stays the same in different situations? Who are you? at your core. I think a lot of times in military, law enforcement, other uniformed professions, it's so easy for us to be that uniform that we wear. Some research would suggest it's actually normal for adults to identify with the work that they do. But that can go too far. And we risk becoming a silhouette that, yeah, is the uniform, but not a whole person. And our professions need whole people. More on that in a minute. Organizations, too, have an identity, aspects about them at the core that define how they think and how they act. So what was our core identity back in early 2006? Well, we were infantrymen. This is an excerpt from the infantry mission doctrine. The mission of the infantry is to close with the enemy by means of fire and maneuver in order to destroy or capture. And we were pretty focused on the destroy part. That's what we did. We were lethal. 2 years before this, our unit had gone to that exact same part of Iraq and had a very kinetic fight. I was not on that deployment. But one news article called Ramadi the Wild West. It was kinetic, it was reflexive. And every one of us in this room knows the impact of muscle memory, or any kind of memory for that matter. Spend a year in a certain location, fighting under certain rules, and those rules become deeply ingrained in you. And so going back in 2006 should have been the same, but it wasn't. Do you remember 2006? Support for the war had waned, and a lot of disagreement from a lot of smart people on how to move forward. Senator McCain just mentioned a few minutes before, he was arguing for a troop surge. Senator Hagel said that that would be folly. General Petraeus would soon be appointed to lead this counterinsurgency fight, and the military was fine-tuning just what we meant by counterinsurgency. That was 2006. A lot of disagreement, a lot of mixed messages. Meanwhile, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, who was now in Iraq, had free reign. And they were getting ready in October of that year to plant their flag in downtown Ramadi and declare it the capital of the new Islamic Caliphate. That was 2006. And so in the midst of the chaos and the mixed messages, we prepared to fight the counterinsurgency. What's that even mean? Well, yes, we were trained and we were lethal, but now our focus would be on the hearts and minds of the population. A mission typically associated with special forces. Our tipping point would not be land. It wouldn't even be the death of a particular enemy leader necessarily. No, our tipping point would be the people of Ramadi. That would be decisive for us. So how did we get there? Well, the leaders above me very deliberately crafted an identity for our unit that was rooted in our history as warriors. But we didn't just stick on the warrior part of the killing part. You see, because I think beneath every infantryman, as lethal and courageous as he is, something else has been forged, a discipline and a willingness to suffer a great deal that's matched nowhere else. And so we tapped into that reservoir of strength. We thought differently how we worked and operated, and we learned to think like contract specialists, like negotiators, like politicians, like general contractors, like law enforcement with higher thresholds for weapons use. We would risk more to ourselves to ensure that we had correctly identified the enemy before returning fire, and we would be sure of our targets. And yet, we would still be able to think like infantrymen, and to flip that switch, and when the enemy so chose, we would be lethal. It worked. It's not my place to comment on what has happened more recently in that area of the world, but it worked. We went from kinetic engagements, troops in contact, we call them, every day, multiple for our task force, to zero, week after week, month after month, by the time that we left. It was stable. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of that discipline. It takes a lot of digging deep into intestinal fortitude and finding ways to accept doing things that are unnatural, because that's really what killing or being willing to be killed is, for the sake of whatever the mission might be. So think about the 20-year-old who's had his brain shaped by combat, and ask him to shake hands with an Iraqi whose hands are probably red with American blood, and to start anew for the sake of the mission. Take a young leader who on that previous deployment was blown up by a vehicle explosion prompted by an Iraqi policeman. Take him to a clandestine meeting at a sheikh's house in the middle of the night in what was previously enemy territory, and when a police truck comes barreling down the road towards him, expect that he won't pull the trigger. He doesn't. How's that? Or take another leader in that same vehicle explosion and ask him to take 8 of his soldiers and live with 200 to 250 Iraqi policemen side by side and to a man. Or the platoon sergeant, grizzled, combat-hardened, who becomes a general contractor. This is what they did. I don't know all the challenges that face you today in law enforcement in America and North America as a whole. But I suspect that meeting those challenges requires radical evaluation of who your organizations are at the core. And questions like, how do we need to evolve to meet our current environment and our current mission set? Such changes, though, don't happen in an organization without changes in leadership as well. And I told you earlier, alluded to it, that I had become a silhouette. I had become so affiliated with my identity as an Army officer and what I thought that meant, all of the doing of the job, the doing of the counterinsurgency, the doing, I was in a do loop. And I'd forgotten to be a whole person. How'd that happen? Well, I had neglected myself. I had made moral compromises in my personal life. I had neglected humility. I hated to say I don't know. I had neglected relationships. John talked earlier about relationships. I had neglected to forge those with my subordinates. I cared more about what the people I worked with thought about me than I did about those people. And frankly, I was a bit of a jerk. You might say it was part of my core identity. You know some people like this. I had a leader come up to me and say, "Hey, sir, we wish things could go back to how they were, with the other guy, where we'd sit around and put a problem on the table and solve it, work together to solve it." And then it hit me like a ton of bricks, and not long afterwards, I was in a shower trailer, looking at myself in the mirror over the sink, seeing the face staring back at me and saying, "Who the bleeper are you?" Not the face I thought would stare back at me 5 years before. And I'm a little thick-headed, but I don't have to be good at math to realize if I've got issues with my subordinate leaders, with my executive officer, my first sergeant, with higher operations officer, that there's a common variable. Me. By the grace of God, not long after that, I went home on leave, had time to reflect. You ever reflect and realize you didn't like it? I had to look myself in the mirror again and again and confront failure. And when you bartered on success, or pretended success even when it wasn't there, that's hard to do. And then I went back and had to try to rebuild and had somewhat of a fresh start, but there's some relationships out of those that will never be rebuilt. But I think I became a better leader. I cared less about what people thought and more about the people I worked with as we continued to get the mission done. After that deployment, my wife and I decided to make a change. We got out of the Army, and I joined a human capital development company. We did a lot of work with the Army on leader development, decision-making, ethics, identity. I thought I knew a little bit about identity. I worked with folks that had to do that transition, taking off the uniform, doing something else. Former special operator, former FBI agent, former state trooper, and so on. I thought I knew about it. But then, Spring of 2014, we decided to make another change and move 2,000 miles, and I would become a student and use my GI Bill. And due to some things that happened in business, I was no longer affiliated with the team I'd been on. And so suddenly it came crashing down where I was just Jamie Goodori. Maybe Jamie Goodori's student, but even as a student, I didn't know what came next, and that bothered me. Felt like I was 18, except I was 30. And in weaving through all that, I realized something that I had claimed for my whole life, to be a follower of Jesus, but it wasn't really my core identity. And I'm not allowed to preach today. Some of you are leaving this internal side, I believe. But I got to tell you, when I think about my identity being rooted in Christ, I think about how powerful God is, that He would love me. Me. It blows my mind. It impacts how I see the people around me, starting with my family. Now I realize that not all of you will come to the same place for your core identity that I did, and I respect that. But let me suggest that looking at who we are without the uniform is absolutely essential to our best performance in uniform. To be whole people capable of leading to the highest levels of excellence. Those of us in this room are united in either having worn the uniform or currently wearing it in service of a higher cause. And as you go back and you think about your organizations, your teams, what needs to change in what you've embraced as your identity? Who are the people that are well-oiled shells, doing but not being? Silhouettes. What can you do to help them? Or if that's you, to help yourself. As we continue through this day, I would ask you, as we're serving our organizations, leading our organizations, are we just doing? Or are we being?
Hi, this is Roy Bethke from the Virtus Group and co-founder of WinX. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I'm hopeful that you found it valuable. Our goal with WinX is to encourage each of us in the profession to think, train, prepare, behave, lead, and live differently. For that to happen, we need your help. If you found the video helpful in any way, please take a moment to share it. You can do that on social media, especially Facebook and Twitter, on the internet, or within your network of like-minded people. Also, we have similar videos available from all of our events. You'll find them posted on the Virtus Group YouTube page. We think the videos are a great tool for learning, but feedback has told us that there is nothing better than being at a WinX event in person. 9 presenters, 18 minutes each, designed to inspire and engage the audience. To get more information about our next WinX event, including location, cost, and registration, please visit www.experiencewinx.com. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/experiencewinx or on Twitter at AskWinX. Until next time, be safe and remember life's most powerful question: what's important now? Thank you.